Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to Ripper's Roadside Tavern, where the ale is brown and the host is browner. My name is Ryan Scott. I shall be leading today's session.
Don't drink the same ales that I do, mate.
I'm joined by Bradley,
Yellow.
Christine,
Hello.
and Sean.
Hello.
So I hope you all had a wonderful New Year's Eve. What did you guys get up to?
Oh, just
I
family
recovered.
games and a couple of people.
I had my last 2 shows of Panto and a Get Out, so I collapsed from the sofa, but I made it to midnight with a rum in
Nice.
hand, so that's okay.
I actually went to see Dan, who's not here today, from our regular stream. He's due another child fairly soon, so I went over there to see if I could help
I
out.
didn't know that.
I learned how to pop a window out of its. I forgot the term now. I was going to really
Have the
like.
frame.
Yeah, but it's not even a frame. There's like the thing that clips it onto the frame.
The ceiling.
Yeah, the beading. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So I learned about window beading and how to pop it out and stuff like that. They're filthy inside, by the way, when you take a window out.
Yeah.
Lots of creepy crawlies.
Just when you need to, if we want to break into anywhere, we know who to come to.
Yeah, exactly.
Beady man over there.
I hung out with Dan and his family, and they have a 5-year-old, and it was lovely to just sort of. We played Quest of Yore, which we may actually chat about later on. It's kind of like it's from the film Onward, Pixar film Onward, and it's like a sort of child-friendly D&D, I suppose you'd call it. So that's what we did, and an indoor fireworks show, which was as bad as you would expect.
An indoor fireworks show.
Yeah, yeah. It's as smoky as you would expect. I don't know why we expected there not to be the amount of smoke that would set off a fire alarm. And at the same time, it's really, really lackluster, obviously, because they're fireworks that have to sort of only propel.
Is it like what the thing is, sparklers?
We had sparklers, but then we were too afraid to use them indoors and ran outside.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So that was worrying. There were indoor sparklers. The rest were like little things that shot a mountain of sparks, but they're only allowed to do it sort of this far off the ground, an inch off the ground. So, but we reveled in the sort of ridiculous.
What is this? A firework
Yeah.
display for ants?
Yes, exactly. So we enjoyed the smallness of it, as I think a lot of people will have this year. Just sort of like reveled in the smallness of it. Appreciate it.
Any New Year's resolutions from anyone, or are you not doing that for 2022?
It's the first time I've thought about it. I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
Like maybe try and get up earlier when I don't have work.
Yeah,
like maybe
that would be a good one.
I think
that's a good
just
one.
general,
That's a good
you
one.
can have it if you want. There's no cut off like.
Well,
dibs, I got it.
Yeah. Well, biting my nails is always a big one that I never do. So maybe I'll try again this year and do
Get
it.
that stuff that you paint. Yeah, paint on it.
I use it, and what I do is I bite my nails through it and then take a drink to wash the taste out.
No, you've got like a sort of subconscious routine.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Just take
what do your nails look like? Let's have a look.
And they're not that bad at the moment. My hands are all cut up though from sort of DIY and stuff. So.
Oh, you're just showing off, just like a little flex there. I've been working out too much, so my nails look bad on my hands.
So my grandparents are moving down here, not to me, but to near my parents. So we spent a couple of days between Christmas and New Year ripping kitchen and bathroom out of the new house because they exchanged on like the 22nd.
Oh, that's nice though to have a new house before
Why
Christmas.
were you just ripping them out? You just want to punish them. You just don't
yeah,
like them very much.
Yeah.
You're not getting a kitchen, you're not getting a bathroom. They
live in a house with no furniture and no kitchen and no bathroom.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
That was it. That was your Christmas gift to them. So, it's survival.
You had it, but not anymore. Like reverse Christmas gift giving.
Yeah.
So my New Year's resolution was I want to like more content of people, friends. I want to find more. I want to support more local businesses as well. So where I can, where possible, I want to sort of try and buy local, and for people, and then also content creators as well. I want to try and support content creators. So if anyone is listening, you can find us at Bloodsong Party on Twitter and Bloodsong on Facebook, Instagram. Come and tell us what you're new, if you're doing anything new, if you decided, hey, this is the year that I'm gonna try and become an Instagram influencer and show my butt off. Tell us about that. Maybe we'll
Don't
support
show
you.
your butt off on Instagram. There's rules.
Don't do that, or if you're like,
there's rules.
TikTok's the way to go now. TikTok's the way to go.
Started a TikTok about showing people how to. I saw a guy recently started showing people how to like put on ties and stuff like that, like dad things for people who didn't grow up with a father, which I thought was quite interesting. Just like
really
little short
cool.
little tidbits. It's very sweet. So if you are doing any content creation this year, if you are doing anything like that, let us know. I personally want to support more and more smaller creators. That's what I'm doing. And I think, and that's actually, that leads us quite nicely into what this episode of the Rippers Roadside Tavern is actually going to be about. We will be next week getting back into the full campaign. I think everybody is back in next week. We'll have a full house, which would be really good. So that'd be nice to get back into the nitty-gritty, and then we can start to see how 2022 treats Blood and Song, which would be very interesting, and which direction we want to take that. But I was speaking to a few friends over the Christmas, over that weird in-between period that we did our last stream on, about sort of the the news resolution and a few of the things I was thinking about doing. And I said to them about the stream, and I think a few people said to me like, "Oh, I love it, but I don't know, I don't understand it, or I don't understand like the concept of what you just roll dice, and or if I wanted to start, like where would I be looking?" And so I think that's one of the things we wanted to just touch on. We mentioned this about what we wanted to do, and Joffrey, who's also busy today, recommended that we maybe take a look at what resources we need and where to find them and what's good and bad. And between us, we've got people who've been playing, who've just started in the last year and have been playing for sort of the last 3 or 4 years. In our group, Joffrey and Dan's been playing since the beginning of time, I think, since just dice were molded with his uncle. And we've got quite a long history between some of us playing D&D. So it'd be nice to sort of break down some of those places where we learned, where we started from, and what we want to sort of, what are the resources, and then we want to take a look at what are the things that make it.
A good idea.
Yeah, and where's good to look, and then also what do we enjoy as players, and how do we approach a table or a virtual tabletop, or how do we do that? So yeah, I think we can just sort of kick straight in.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of the things. So the first thing is, Dungeons and Dragons, it is a role-playing game where you use dice to basically tell a story, right? And there's 2 main groups of people at the table. You've got the dungeon master or the game master, often abbreviated to DM or GM, that will run everything. They have the books, they have the rules, they are the people behind the screen playing every character that isn't you. And then on the other side of the table, you have the player characters who has everyone who's created their own character. They're rolling the dice, they're creating the story, they're building the world. They're us that we see on the stream, and Johnny is our DM. That's the sort of main arc of it. Effectively, it's collaborative storytelling and improv with dice that decide the fate of the actions that you complete.
Yes.
Which
very robust.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's
almost
it's
almost like I've written it down.
I think as well, if anybody's got any questions about anything that we say today, should they jump in the comments? And
yes,
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, if we're not clear about anything, because we're
if there's anything, chuck it in the comments, or as I said, message us at Bloodstone Party if you're listening to this afterwards. To see if you have anything or any questions or anything like that. And then we can try and answer them at the end if anything come up, or we'll answer them as we go. And also you guys as well, break me off if I've said anything wrong, or if there's anything that you guys want to contribute as well.
I can't keep stopping you that much, mate.
Well, all right, fair enough. You've been playing for like 2 years, Brad, so
I've been playing for as long as you have.
So I think there's 2 main ways of playing Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of it traditionally was done physically, and with COVID and with the advancement technologies we've had, now there's also a way to look at playing D&D digitally. That's how we've been doing it for this entire stream. Sean and I started playing physically with Dan. As I said, Dan definitely started playing physically a long time ago with other editions, and I think there is a nice Venn diagram that fits over the sort of resources that you need and the way that you can play when you're looking at D&D, and that is digitally or physically. If we look at the main thing I think for most of these across the board is that you'll need the rule book, which gives you everything you need to know how to play D&D. Breaks down very nicely. There it is.
It's called the Player's Handbook.
Well, even then, the basic rules, the very basic rules are free. Are free and given out by
and it's a shorter
wizards.
document than this.
Yeah.
And as we as I mentioned as well, the DM, which is something that is physical, normally they would have a screen which basically sits between them and the players if you're playing physically. I think Bradley's got one which he's going to run off and get us, and to show us what a DM screen would look like. I don't know if you can see it in his. He zoomed in his camera.
At the moment, all he's doing is showing off his pajamas. Oh, is he zoomed himself in on the stream? Okay.
Yeah, he zoomed himself in, so we can't see.
Can't see his pajamas.
He's got
Is it backwards? Is it? It's backwards, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. The
Yes, it's a strange spell.
Oh well.
But so there's the Dungeon Master Guide and there's Player's Handbook as well. There are two very, very vital pieces which lay out everything to basically get to understand. Now, there's so many videos, there's so many resources online, there's so many TLDRs about this that you can find online, that you can find through Reddit, and many YouTube videos of people trying to explain it to you, even though some of those come out to an hour as well. I think the truest and best way to be able to understand and learn D&D is to play it, right? To play it and have a knowledgeable and patient DM to run you through it. I've run games, with my friends who love video games, love adventures, love TV and fantasy. And if you have a basic understanding of that, it's very easy to slip yourself into a world, and then you build upon that with the dice. And as a DM, maybe a little bit of rule breaking here and there to sort of just let people understand it. And then also, and being fun. And then the last thing, which again, we can't see it because of the way strategically places his camera, but in his background, he's got a load of books of specific adventures. Now these are basically addendums to the actual D&D itself, and in these you can find, they set you out an adventure. You are 4 people that meet at a tavern, and you get given a specific task, and you must go here, and inside of those, as a DM, you help guide the players around the world, and ultimately they will complete something, going and defeating a big evil genie or fighting a dragon in a dungeon.
A lot of them are very different in a way that they give you the information you need as a DM, and the way it's run for the players, there's some drastic differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are your key documentation pieces. Now, as you can see, Bradley's got them physically, but we play digitally, and there are a lot of great places to find this. You can always buy books at if you're just searching for Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards of the Coast will sell them. Many independent sellers will sell these as well. But the key places we go for digital versions of everything is we go to D&D Beyond. Now, I've spoken to a few people who have not used this or have used other tools, but this is essentially, it's a third-party company that has all of the resources online. You can create a free account. It has all the resources online. You can create characters. You can see the book. You can see the adventures. And then as you buy the different modules from them digitally, you can then get extra classes, extra monsters, extra items to be able to add to your games and your campaigns and these kind of things that you play.
So my experience, I don't know what it's like for you guys. So because when we were transitioning to digital, people were very hot on Roll20. It was the Skype of of online systems before Zoom came in, the D&D Beyond of Zoom. So I used Roll20, but at the time it was quite sort of new, and I think perhaps it was the paywall, but also it didn't quite have the depth of D&D Beyond, being able to have your digital character sheet and share it and everything like that.
Well, so the problem was that you had a digital character sheet, but it was strictly within the campaign that you were in. You couldn't move it out. You couldn't print it off. It was hard to change. It had, the information was sequestered away sometimes, and you couldn't quickly add a feat in the way that you could in D&D Beyond.
So you started digitally, didn't you, Brad, as well?
Yeah, I started on Roll20.
And you started on Roll20?
I started on Roll20, yeah.
And then you transitioned
at first with a friendship group, then I played a game with a couple of random people for a month, and that was terrible. Don't ever do that.
No, that's really interesting though, because it's sort of like when you go to a trade show or a game, a game expo. I've never done this actually. I always want to. I see all of the sort of people at their
I think in the flesh it's probably more okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But joining this random people's, they played it so much like a video game that it was just unfun to me, and that was maybe that specific game that they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think as well, just to throw it out there, one of the reasons that I even joined in was because I was working with Dan on a show, and he said, he was crashing at my digs one night, and we were chatting because the digs that I was in, the lady whose flat it was, she had D&D stuff, and I had realised this, but Dan I didn't realise that Dan played D&D, and I'd never done it, but I've watched lots of those sort of role-playing. I played loads of role-playing games on, on the Xbox or whatever, and I'd also watched lots of fantasy TV shows and loved reading fantasy books. And so we got chatting about it, and he invited me down, and it literally was it'd be nice, we've got on really well on this job, why don't we do a social thing where we get together around a table and have a chat, and you can meet some of my friends. I'm like, okay, cool. So
I mean, that's the first time we met you, right, Christy?
That's what we did with us.
That was the first time we met. And then I think doing this online thing, it was, if it wasn't for the Zoom, if I was just playing it digitally and not on Zoom as well, where we were chatting to each other while we're doing it, I think it'd be a very different experience. And I don't think I personally would like it, because there's the point of a game, to my mind, is the social aspect of it, which you get way more than you do with computer games. But then that's, I think, partly because I started with the tabletop version, maybe. Yeah. Rather than
so we've been trying to put in as we've been developing over the last few years, we've been actually trying to find like ways to put the water cooler chats in. So like when we were at the table with Dan, and you have sessions that go on till like 3-4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, you need breaks and you take breaks, and there's lots of movement around the table. It's less prescribed than doing it on a stream. And people will go off and they'll chat, and they'll have a little secret chat about what's happening with their character, or they'll just have a chat that then, like with all creative stuff, they'll just chat nonsense. Then suddenly you'll go, man, I never thought about that. Thanks for chatting to me about that. I now know something completely different about my character, or about this, or about that. And that's the aspect I miss the most, I think, about doing it online. So we actually have to chat before, chat after, chat in WhatsApp. We have to sort of find, not the water cooler, but like the tea and toast. We have Faeza's tea room, don't we?
Yeah.
In our WhatsApp group.
That's our little WhatsApp group, but it doesn't include the DM.
Because
we don't want him to suddenly go, I had a sneaky idea, I'm going to thwart them.
Right, I think it's important. Like, there is a distinction between a lot of people. What now COVID is, has not enabled us to be able to play physically very often. I think there is something very lovely about sitting across the table from people and being able to play it. And that kind of leads me into, so we talked about what resources you need for digital, D&D Beyond, a Zoom or another VoIP. You'll hear Johnny often talk about Foundry, which is, and he talks about that as a VTT, and that means virtual tabletop, something like a Roll20. I think there's Dwarven Forge as well. And Foundry is another one. They are basically like your virtual table that you can put maps on, and you can have that aspect. And then, so physically is something quite interesting to me. When we first started playing, Sean and I, at Dan's house, he had years worth of counters and minifigurines and the most important thing, right? Hundreds of dice. He had hundreds of dice,
Huge dice pool.
Huge dice pool. And maybe some costumes as well, if you fancy that. If if you're that way inclined, which is the sort of the Chad's view of D&D, isn't it? Is like a bunch of people in the basement dressed like wizards and barbarians and stuff like that playing. Now, I would love that.
That's the dream. That's where everybody wants to get to.
That's the dream. I'm
actually all right with a bit of cosplay. I am.
Yeah, that's the Stranger Things version of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that's the friend circle that you play with. Those are people you can bring all of that. And and there's, with technology now, I think Dan wants to build a table that he can have like a touch screen in it, but you can have all that now, where you can have it all physically in a touch screen, and you can move all your characters around, or you can go classic and have your little figurines, and someone can spend the time drawing maps out. There's many different ways to sort of play.
I thought of doing this.
Well, I was gonna say, like, because when I came into this as well, when we came into the stream, I got a bit overwhelmed with all of the digital options, and I was like, I don't know what I actually need, blah blah blah. But what it comes down to is that all these digital interactions and these digital softwares all started with very simple physical things. So, and it took me a little while to get my head around that. So Dan told me, he was like, don't get confused about it. All you need is a notebook, some dice. So I might to roll your dice so it doesn't fall off the table because that's annoying. And some snacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Essential.
That was basically it. He said that is all you need. And then if you turn up, generally the DM will have some other stuff, the dungeon master. So they will come up with the map, which is divided into little grids. They will come up with either little discs, like little counters, or if they've splashed out, you get these little figurines. And all that is a physical way of manifesting where you are in relation to things. So you can tell if something's in range of your crossbow, or or if you can get to the exit to make a speedy retreat, as we've had to do a couple of times. But ultimately it's pen and paper and some dice and some food, and that is all you need to start. And that made me go, oh, okay, cool. That was it, really.
So I think personally, now that I've played both sides of it, I think my personal favorite is definitely like if you can do this safely, a hybrid between a physical game and a digital game. Like, so being able to play around a table, but you grab your iPad and you have D&D Beyond on it, because it just makes life easier for rolling and the calculations and being able to see stuff. When we first started, we only did physical, and then Sean started to use more digital as well. And
I'm digital all the way. Although I like it in person, so I agree with you. So iPads in person, you need that. You need that connection.
And I've started DMing a game with our family. And what we've done is we've done that physical crossover. So we give them D&D Beyond on their devices, but because we're all a family of gamblers, not
they
badly,
love rolling
but,
the dice.
We love rolling dice. Love rolling the dice. So literally, when we played it on holiday, and they were like, "Where's the dice, Ryan?" And I was like, "No, I just roll it on your phone." And they were like, "Ah." And they were genuinely like they love that feeling of that chance, watching it roll over.
I know you've got some flow on, but I just want to tell you this little anecdote because I just had forgotten about it till I was reminded by my aunt. So a couple of us are regular. My dad, my aunt, my fiance Ryan, and me. We're the sort of core group that have been playing a few games of the Lost Mines, which is a module for D&D 5. Our other aunt, who we love dearly, little bit of a cheeky monkey she is. She loves a game, and she loves like a card game, and she's very quick at picking up rules. But we thought this is the sort of thing that not many people are going to be attracted to it if they're on holiday. They're in the sunny Greece. They don't want to come and sit at a table and do this. She sat down for 5 minutes, and she was just watching us play. And then she started to throw in some like really fantastic suggestions, didn't she? And then she felt part of it. After she'd thrown a few suggestions, she felt part of it. And then she understood some of the game, because some of it's very easy to understand, isn't it? You sort of have stats and you roll, and there are things you can do, and somebody's telling you the rules, like the DM. And then the other side of it, she didn't understand, but she was totally willing to sort of compromise at that moment, and just sort of eventually figure it out. So I think that's something really important as well. Sometimes just let people sit in if they're not quite ready, because the vibe of everyone playing is something amazing, isn't it? Something fairly unique, I think.
And so that brings me to one of my first of our recommendations, right? I know, Bradley, you said playing with a game of randomers wasn't the right fit for you.
Yeah, it's tough.
But Johnny, our DM, plays he calls it his Thursday game, and he started that by going to a local board game bar or comic bar. I think it's a board game bar, comic book shop hybrid. Found they had a game available on a Thursday, and he plays this game and played it with people he had no idea. A few of them are friends, but a few of them are randoms at the table. So there are board game bars everywhere. In Croydon, we had Ludicrous. I think there's one of a similar name up in Nottingham now. But there's always something near you, or there's always a place near you. So if you are interested, right,
except me,
those are perfect places.
Oh, I'm sure you'll have a place, Brad.
It's in Milton Keynes. I cannot be asked to drive 40 minutes.
There's nothing on the Isle of Sheppey. I'm just throwing it out there, but that's all right. It's okay.
But Kristen, you work at the tea room, right? You could start it.
I don't work there anymore. I don't work there anymore.
That's true.
Right, you could come back as a D&D consultant for the tea room, couldn't you?
Genuinely though, when I came out, when I actually actively said to people, "Oh, I do this D&D game on Monday nights."
Is a little. I was about to compare it to coming out, then I realised it's totally not like that, and I don't want to insult anyone.
No, but when I started talking about it, I suppose that's probably it. I had people who were like, "Oh, I used to play that when I was a kid." I don't have anybody to play with, and I think that's a big thing, because it is a team game.
Yeah.
And you do need at least three people, do you think? Or maybe
I'd say a DM and 2 players would work fine.
Yeah, DM and 2 players. Yeah. 3's a nice amount. Dan said there was 15 people in one of the games. It was about 10 people.
Yeah, that sounded like absolute hell.
Chaos.
Sounded like hell. Rounds take?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But the thing is, if you're willing to handle it, but then I've listened to, and we'll come to this in a minute. But one of the podcasts I listened to, NADPod, they did their big final battle, and they brought every guest star that they had on.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, to be part of this massive battle. And it was really, it took a while, but it was really good. And because it was also a comedy podcast, they were all bounced off each other, and it was really lovely. So it's possible to hold games with more and more people. But yeah, I think that's a recommendation, right? Go and see if you want to try something new this year. There's always going to be places, and what you might find is you might turn up there and be invited to play, and you might not play that session. You might sit in it, understand who's at the table, understand what the DM's like, understand what the other players are like, and then if you're interested, it's very easy to roll in a character, right? A new person. We've done it recently with Joffrey. We spent nearly a year before we got someone in, and we saw how quickly he came in, how quickly Johnny introduced him, and how actually he, as a player, and his character Docs, has been able to involve themselves in the story, through some of the work that they've done in the background to get him in. So it's very easy. So don't feel like, I'll wait for them to start a new campaign or something like that. It's possible. Good DM will be able to involve you and open the game up for you.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
I had a recommendation for a podcast as well. If you, it was one that I listened to. I found really helpful. It's just called How Friends Roll. Johnny recommended it to me, and it is a DM sitting down with a complete bunch of noobs who've never played it before, and he just starts from the top.
That's
and
cool.
It's funny. It is funny. There's a bit where someone creates someone's a bard, and she decides to create a song for these centipedes that should, in theory, be killing them, but somehow she managed to sing a song that they really love and rolls really well, and she becomes like a massive hero for these centipedes, and they start singing her song. But it's just like lots of stuff like that.
Is it an audio podcast?
Yeah,
video or just
it's really
audio?
good. I might put a link up on Twitter so people can see it. I'll also put a link on the basic rules. So you can find that if you want to check that out. I'll do a little stream.
Little cheat sheet. Oh, that'd be lovely. Yeah.
So for me, I found, so in terms of resources, I think good podcast to listen to. As I mentioned, NADPod. That's not another D&D podcast. They were ex college humor writers and actors. And they started their own campaign, and it's really funny. But they started with 2 people who'd never played before, and so it's Jake from Jake and Amir, who own Headgum Studios. It's he's actually playing in this with them, and he's really interesting to sort of see him go, I have no idea what I'm doing, to by the end of it, like absolutely smashing out people. But it is a comedy podcast at the end of it as well. So they do it. They bring it in nicely. They explain rules. They have character arcs. They have a Patreon if you're that way inclined as well. So that's one for me. And then if you want something that's very absurdist, there's always Dungeons and Daddies, which is the Rocket Jump people. That was one of the first D&D podcasts I listened to after playing with Johnny, and he sort of recommended it. Used to watch the Rocket Jump guys on YouTube a long time ago. They're sort of big nerds. And
watching
they have
Freddie Wong's original
Freddie
YouTube
Wong's
channel.
YouTube videos.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Daddies, did you say? All right.
Yeah.
And dogs, for some reason they've got that on there.
That's their newest. They did a fetch quest was their newest season, where they all played dogs, which was interesting. It's just like a little side
that's
bit.
funny, and it's fetch quest. I like that very much. See, that's my sort of thing.
And so those are my 2. And then I have a particular DM that I really like, or GM that I really like. A guy called his handles are Tormented by Gnomes. And
I really like it.
He's a really fantastic, patient, knowledgeable DM. He does Casters and Castles, which is his. He does that with the Overwatch casters, the Shoutcasters. But then he's also done Red Sky City, which is Cyberpunk. And again, he's a person that's involved himself in this is his sort of job now, to be able to become a professional DM basically, and so he's able to run that. So that's another person, Joe, I think his name is. He's my recommendations of things to listen to and people to look out
just
for.
Give me a very, very quick overview of those two podcasts that you're talking about. Like, what's the tone? What's the vibe?
Okay.
What do they go for? What are they sort of
Dungeons
similar
and
to?
Daddies is not a BDSM podcast. This is what they say.
Right.
Sometimes a D&D podcast. So their one is way more about the characters, the people, their interactions, rather than the cold hard dice rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, as Johnny once described it, it's how many 80s and 90s film and TV references can be crammed into an episode is basically what that is.
Yeah,
so
the premise is that a bunch of single dads lose their children. Oh, they're not single. Dads. I thought they were single dads.
No.
Well, basically, a bunch of dads lose their children through a portal in a fantasy world, and they have to go through and save them.
Yeah, which is like basically that. You can imagine what that's like, right?
Yeah.
It's
a bunch of like modern day dads as well, to put that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then NADPod it's like, I'd say it's absurdist high fantasy. So it's still set in Faerun. It still abides by the sort of the world of D&D. But then they have ridiculous sort of things, like they have like a bullywug fighting ring, which is like a ridiculous thing they do, or they just play interesting characters where they'll have stupid moments. They have Moonshine has a possum called Paw Paw, which is her like familiar, and it's just, and then it turns out to be a lawyer.
Okay,
it's
that's
like
it.
It's stupid.
You've given me an example of what it's like.
But then when it comes to brass tacks, like it gets serious. Because they're all
they have that sort of critical role
actors,
acting chops and drama, and
they know the right ways to like make a moment funny and then make a moment like epic or pull on the heartstrings. Like I listened to their entire first campaign while I was at the beginning of the first lockdown. Actually, no, it was before that. Sorry, it was while I was jobless, and I remember just like there were times where I was like at the gym, like just not moving because I was so involved in what was happening, or like on a squat rack with a tear rolling down my eye because like something really sweet is happening. So those are two of the definite ones. Those are my big recommendations.
Just quickly, what was the Cthulhu one you were talking to me about the other day?
So I listened to. Oh, you might have to come back to me.
I was trying to remember what it was as well.
Ain't Slayed Nobody.
Right.
That's what it's called. And they basically did Call of Cthulhu set in a Western world, which was very interesting. But they were all, again, they're quite like, they're an interesting, they're a bootstrap
Borderlands
group.
DLC did that, didn't they?
Yes, and Three Black Halflings recently did. They did a series, Obelisks, which is like sort of a Western D&D inspired world. And Three Black Halflings is really interesting because it is sort of, they are a group that challenge the sort of white Western ideologies that are put into D&D,
stereotypes that
are put in, and sort of make it a much more like interesting and inclusive world. So that's another great recommendation there.
So I had a really weird sort of approach to this, where I enjoyed watching little bits of all of these. I sort of dip in and out of all of these live streams, but I have never watched a full season of them. And it's really fascinating, it's like the actors that don't watch their own work and never have any time for movies. It's like, so my sort of approach to this is I'm interested in the collaborative storytelling element. So I'm a writer, as well as lots of other things, including Civil Servant. But part of what I do as a writer, the writer part of me, it is involved in the idea of long form character arcs, TV, that sort of thing is what I love. So I approach the stream side of it and the character side of it with my love of television, effectively, and or franchises, film franchise, and other sorts of things where characters and narratives go over a long period of time. So I actually don't have any recommendations for like streams because I haven't watched a full season of it.
Well, you watch a couple of guys on YouTube though, don't you?
Yeah. So what I do appreciate are the heavyweights. So listen, we'll get to in terms of paper resources, RPG It's RPG Bot. I'm going to double check, but it's like rpgbot.net is a fantastic resource. So I've been accused in the past.
A lot of D&D stuff that's in books you can access for free on there.
Yes, so I think it's RPG Bot. So what it does is it'll show you the best combinations within classes and races and all sorts of other things. So it'll break down the classes, subclasses, and other things. So for someone like me who doesn't have hours and hours to trawl the books and learn this sort of stuff, or play like Dan for decades till you figure out what components slot in. No, I'm serious, for decades.
I mean, he has played for decades.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. I was going to
yeah,
say a
fair enough.
decade, and when I spoke to him the other day, he said more than a decade. I was like, oh yeah, shit. So because I don't have the time for that, RPG Bot is an incredible resource for 5e, and it lets you see what the best combinations are. So if you're interested in min-maxing, if that's what you like at the game, go for it. But I just like it to show me what I'm not doing. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do the things that are going to make me a terrible team member. Yeah. So if I end up mixing all these things for fun, but I don't understand how they fit together, I'm going to be doesn't matter about the role play aspect or anything. When it comes to a combat, I'm going to be terrible.
Nah, doesn't matter.
Yes,
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
So for me,
for me,
that matters a lot.
I know, right? Yeah, and then obviously I differ in that I will deliberately create an absolutely awful character because I think it's hilarious and interesting.
And by the way, I think it's hilarious to play with a character like that. I really genuinely do. But I don't find it enjoyable to play a character like that. Do you know what I mean? Even if my character is silly, I want him to be good, in a way that I feel. Yeah, I guess efficient. Yeah, perhaps. But no, I love playing with characters that are ridiculous. But I just use it to try and avoid things. So I'll never like select the combinations that min-max me to the best, because there's still the role play element I love. But yeah, so RPG Bot is the resource, the paper resource I would go to. There are 3 YouTubers I really enjoy, and that's Dungeon Dudes, who like are quite big in the space of upskilling and informing.
I'd argue they're the biggest information D&D YouTube channel.
I think they probably are. I just want to make sure I'm not just in my algorithm echo chamber, and there's so many other people I just haven't been able to venture out to. But yeah, I think Dungeon Dudes are amazing. Like they're so level-headed and lovely and informative and casual, and like it's really lovely watching their stuff. I like XP to level 3. Yeah, because he's the sort of person.
Fucking funny.
Yeah, but the sort of person I would dread to be in the game with him, right? For because I feel like he's got an element.
And he's
of
very much the new blood, isn't he? He's very much the new blood of D&D.
Yes, yeah. And so and then the other guy who's maybe the old guard, the opposite side, is how to be a great GM, on YouTube. Dude with glasses, English guy, like a classic. Like, and he's got some really fantastic.
I've got a 4th recommendation.
Oh, go on, go for it.
Which is Matt Colville.
Okay.
Basically, he's what Matt Mercer is to D&D as what Spock is to Star Trek. Does that make sense?
I mean, it doesn't, but maybe if you elaborate, it will.
So Matt Mercer is the amazing character and stories guy, and I would also argue that Matt Colville is an amazing character and stories guy, but he's much more the war game and logical part of D&D.
Matt Mercer's Kirk, Matt Colville's Spock is what you're saying, basically.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that was the analogy.
No, I get you now. No, you got it.
So
I like that analogy a lot.
But he was, interesting enough, I found this out the other day, the lead writer on Prey.
Oh, that's cool. The reboot.
No, not that Prey.
The original Prey.
No, the other Prey. The asymmetric Prey.
Oh, you're going to get our nerdy sides out now. Prey, what's the year? We're going to have to suffix all of it. Prey.
2012. It was the game that released where they had like 4 hunters facing off against a big monster.
Ah, okay.
I think it was called Prey,
anyway. Was there a crossover in his writing? Can you see
No, because they fucking, the producers of that game absolutely just like slammed its face into the ground.
Well, listen,
just like dragged it along by its ankles.
Well, I look into Matt Colville, or Matthew. He goes by Matthew Colville a lot as well, doesn't he? Colville, Colvill.
Yeah, he streams, but he has great long-running YouTube series now of information for DMs and players alike on not only information about how to run games and how to do the rules of D&D and stuff like that, but also just social aspects of the game, how to be a good player, how to be a good DM, and how to arbitrate and stuff like that if you have problems at the table.
Sure. Which is a huge part of being a DM. I'm sure we'll get into that later on today. But yeah, arbitrate it's a fascinating thing to sort of corral fun, isn't it? That's basically, and it's such a hard fucking job to do as a DM, to corral fun.
And
too much fun, and it's like there's no stakes and nothing matters. And then too little fun, and it's too. You're like, why am I here? It's such a balance. So much respect to DMs that do it well. Absolutely.
As a new player, Christine, did you, aside from us and Dan, did you have anywhere that particular that you looked, or any resources that you took a look at?
Yeah, I mean, How Friends Roll helped me understand how games worked, like in terms of like, okay, this is how you talk to each other around a table, which is very cool. But I did a little search. Johnny sent me some links as well, which were really useful. But I mean, in terms of physical things that I was like, okay, well, how do you, because this, when you look at it, is the scariest fucking thing in the world.
I could.
So
sure.
you're like, you don't, like it says here how to roll a character, but when I was reading it, it was like, I don't understand what they're talking about. What's HP? What's rolling a D8? I don't understand. So Critical Role do really useful little D&D helpers episodes as well. There was one guy who showed me how to write. There was it's funny because your DM, your Dungeon Master has a like, it's not a cheat sheet, it's a screen, but it holds all of their information on it, and it'll be like little things like how exhaustion rules work, and all this sort of stuff. And I think Johnny sent me a link to say this is what some Dungeon Masters do. So because I was like, what's a DN screen? I don't know. I haven't got a clue. So, and then I sort of sneakily thought, well, okay, maybe I can do my own for my own little cheat sheet. So I bloody love a list.
Don't we all?
I love getting things out of my head. So I got myself a little bit of, this is all going to be backwards, I know, because that's how screens work. I got myself a little two-sided bit of cardboard. On one side, it's all about the activities you're doing when you're not fighting, and then others is about combat, because that's basically how it was explained to me, is that there's two sides of the game. One is the traveling and the storytelling and the exploring side of things, and then the other one is combat, which some people lean more to having more of one side of it to the other. I know you love smashy. You're a lifelong barbarian, and I bloody love it.
I am in real life and in game.
But I've got so confused, like how you can quickly look these things up in a book. So I just sort of pulled out. No, you can't at all.
Control F on a PDF.
This sounds terrible, but there was a guy who was selling one on Etsy, and he just put too many pictures up, so I pinched some elements from it, because I was like, why would I pay? I know it's terrible, but
I mean, that's Etsy in a nutshell. Why would I pay for that? I can make that myself.
I can make that open up.
A lot of money. Anyway, so I've got things like exhaustion rules, and thing about that money, like how money works, resting, like short rests versus long rests, because all of this stuff was like, I'm never going to remember this when I start. I'm playing with people who are a lot more experienced than I am, so like I just need a little cheat sheet, and that's basically what that is. And then on here I've got the combat bit, and it just tells you the moves. Other than attacking, you can do things like, you can do other types of moves like grappling and dodging and helping someone else out and stuff like that. It's not all about swinging your sword or drawing your bow. And then I've added my own little notes, and I've read, I keep forgetting that. I keep forgetting what that is, so I've added some more notes on there.
There's a bit of an in-joke with people if they're like, if you're starting and you want a simple character, create a champion fighter, because all they do is hit things, and that's it. They hit things and they're not that great. They
steadily hit things harder and harder and harder and harder,
and they hit things harder
until they become one of the best things in the game at hitting things.
Absolutely. And so that's why a lot of people say, and I'm not just wearing champion on my t-shirt, because I just realized that point. But if you want to, you want to play a champion fighter, it's very easy. Even a barbarian, although they're smashy, they have rage to deal with and things like that, But then I was listening to Castle and Castles, and one of the guys is like, I wish play champion fighter, not because I don't understand the game, just because I find that they're the most fun. And they're the one that I can get the most RP behind, sort of playing them, because I just basically reskin my same sort of style of character into different ways of doing it.
Cool.
And then on the flip side of that, if you like, the thing that I like the least, but Johnny really loves, wizards, I'd say, are the hardest class, right? Because there's loads of resource management and loads of spells, and yes, they become quite
I'd argue
high-powered.
that artificers are actually
Yes.
quite hard.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
I would almost argue artificers are harder, just because you've got a
Yeah.
lot more to remember to do.
Especially if it's your first main character.
Yeah. Outside of combat,
think.
even, you've got so much you need to remember to do. Like at the end of a long rest, you need to do this stuff and all that stuff.
Oh, this sheet.
Yeah.
So my recommendation, I think, for actual creating a player character, for creating PC, is first of all speak to your DM and find out if you're joining another party, if you're joining like a random group, as we said, speak to the DM and the GM, see what's in there. Sean mentioned the term min-maxing earlier. Min-maxing is basically where you try and make your character be the best at everything, and
you crunch you use the numbers, don't you? Or you crunch the numbers to sort of output the best possible character on paper.
Yeah.
So people will say, like for example, a barbarian, you'd want to then play a Goliath because they get automatic strength bonuses and they get this resistance and they get this kind of thing. So you're picking the best class, you're picking the best race for that best class, and then you want this item and you want to take this at this level. That's min-maxing, right? Now you're welcome to do that. And as Bradley said, on the flip side, you can create something redonkadink, but have a conversation with the DM or the GM and see whether it will fit into their world, whether they can find a place for it. Because although yes, it would be great to play something absolutely ridiculous, it might not gel with all the players at the table.
Also, if you have the right
come in
GM, is this true, Ryan? If you have the right GM, you can always backtrack on anything or talk to them about changing anything. You're never set in stone as well. That's the beautiful thing. Don't get too overwhelmed at the start.
And then if you're playing new with a whole group of people, have that open conversation about, you know what, I actually want to try, and we do this. We've sort of said, actually, if we play this one, I think I'd like to play this class. And then someone goes, oh, I was thinking about that, but actually then, like, I think we had the conversation about the Druid, right? I think someone wanted to play, I was thinking about Druid, and Bradley was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing one for Blood and Song. And I was like, cool, well then I was in the second hand of that was
figure something else out.
Well, I was going to play Paladin, so great, I'll slip into that then. And then
from
that's
what
that
I understand. From what I understand, you could have a game where you've just got 5 barbarians,
of course,
their way around the thing, and that's
that would be excellent,
not
by the way.
Yeah, I mean, because even the same class can specialize in different things. A perfect example is a sorcerer who can you can be a divine soul sorcerer who is very specialized into healing, or you can be a lightning sorcerer, which is damage.
So when I joined, I was actually the last person to join. So Johnny had already chatted to a lot of other people about their characters, and I didn't know classes. I didn't know the subclasses within classes. I hadn't got a flipping clue. So when I was chatting, I chatted to Johnny and Dan together. Was it just them, or were you involved as well, Sean?
I can't remember. I'm always involved somehow.
It was a very long time ago. I know. I felt like it was a very long time ago. But I was like, I just had an idea that I didn't want to be in the front line because it scares the crap out of me. You should see when I roll in the old initiative order. If I roll high,
especially as an
freaks me out. I do not like it. And I got that idea because I'd always, whenever I played on like on the old RPGs on computer games, I'd always gone for like a ranger character anyway. So I was like, I'll stay away from all of that. Thank you very much. So they told me what other characters were already there, and I was like, okay, well, what would be a good fit? I think it would be quite cool. And Johnny was talking about his world as well, and he said about Zawati, which is this place where you've got these engineers and these incredible people. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. I think I'll do that. And then everyone was like, oh, are you sure?
We tried not to dampen your fun and your enthusiasm. If you're up for it, go for it. But
to be fair, it's all good.
And actually, it's been interesting. Christina, I know you're saying you're in with the episodes catching up, but it's been interesting watching Bradley play Faeza.
Oh, I wonder if we have this chat at the end and cap off in a sort of like where what's happening next.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Faeza's a beast. Secretly, Faeza's an absolute beast.
What we're going to find out now is that Christine has been absolutely not playing Faeza.
But what's wonderful is it was like she was almost backed into a corner. We're all backed into a corner, and then the real sort of like
the fire came out.
Real violence of what she's capable of came out.
Yeah, this is when I find out I had some feet that I had no idea, because I spend most of my time scrolling through my character sheet going, what can I throw at this?
Well,
I don't know. I'll pick
that actually brings me very nicely to the next recommendation we were going to have. So yes, D&D Beyond has everything grouped up, have everything done. If you're playing physically, when we started playing 4.5, everything was on cards. And Dan luckily had everything color coded for us. He had little sleeves and everything like that. Again, we're talking about someone with decades worth of collection of pieces. And that's actually one of the things, Sean, that you mentioned that you missed when they moved to 5e.
Yeah, definitely. It was really easy in 4e because you had separate cards, and they each denoted what you could do, and you had like move, action.
Major, minor.
Yeah, major and minor. Yeah, and you could sort of see them very clearly. And for some reason, so I prefer the system of 5, I do. But it's interesting starting there because for some reason, having them as cards like that, it's very video gamey. So I was able to role play my combat easier. So I was able to go, well, I can only do 6 things. So I better think about what I'm going to do when I fire an arrow. So the first character we played was a sort of an archer. I can't remember at the time, actually, interestingly, because Dan handled a lot of the character creation alongside us to get us started. I sort of trusted him fully. So I can't remember. I don't know if I was a ranger, if I was an archer, or a kind of battle mastery, sort of like a fighter with long range weapons. I really don't know. But and we're going to have fun translating it to 5 at some point.
Yeah.
But so much more I was inclined to role play the combat, and that's something that for some reason when I went to 5, I found it very difficult to role play the combat. It's maybe it's because it's laid out on your sheet in a different way. Maybe I really don't know. I've been thinking about it myself, but I've been trying to consciously implement more role play into my character, which is now more of a simple character like that ranger.
I think
so I can only do
it's probably because actually in actuality, if you like, you've only got 3 things that you can do during a turn, which is movement, action, bonus action, and then you've got 1,000 things that cost you an action, 1,000 things that cost you a bonus action.
Yeah,
I found that quite late. I found out that I could, because I think it took, we were 6 months in when I realised, and Johnny realised, because Artificer is quite new to a lot of people, that I should have been losing my bonus action every time I told Toots to do something.
Yeah.
But then that's what happens with it around the table. You went, bugger, we haven't been doing that. All right, we'll do it from now on then.
Yeah.
There's no like, and no one's going to pull you up on it and do anything.
And then there are specific things that minions can't do, or pets can't do as well. Can't hold action, fortunately.
But that's all right, because I think that's what the DM comes into hand for, and also having other players who are quite experienced, because you go, actually, I think you're allowed to do this.
Yeah.
Then everyone gets their books out.
Checks for parity, just make sure.
Yeah.
And that's also where homebrew sort of rules come in, or sort of like, sort of house rules and other sorts of things. House rules is something, I don't know if you've got a segment for house rules.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, we'll touch on homebrew and house rules just after this recommendation. So, I can see you've got your cards there, right?
Well, I don't know if you can see these. Again, they'll likely be backwards. Oh, wait, no, I'm already flipped in my screen. Yeah. So these will be forwards, right?
They're forwards.
I don't know.
I can read it. Chatter
there
at the top.
So when I knew I was playing a fighter, you can buy these. These are official sort of D&D merch. And I bought these cards, and they each have the potential actions that you can do, actions and bonus actions. It separates them. There are monk ones in here as well, because I think it was just the one that I bought. There's barbarian, and then they have
how short that barbarian one is.
Yeah, I know. Just two cards. And then they have things like sort of, as you can see, drow written at the bottom, so they'll have sort of race specific options. So so if you need to, there are resources that transition you from 4 to 5. So I don't need these anymore, but
there are a lot online where you can print out, like I've seen people literally, wizards keep literal spell books and separate them out. You know, their cantrips.
There's
their
so
first level,
many.
their
So
second
many, if you're
level.
willing to cash out, you can really get some
course you can.
nice stuff. You can get there's the guys that do animated spell cards that are holographics
Yeah, that's
that
nice.
move.
I think there's also like
really nice.
a wealth of notebooks that you can look at and buy. I mean, I just use a notebook, but
I literally bought a pack of 30 school textbooks that I write in because it was
I love those exercise books
because it was like £5.
I think the statute of limitations passed, but I used to nick them from school because I loved them so much. I used to open the cupboard where they were kept and take like 5 and stuff them in my bag. But I used to write in them.
You know that, right? They cost
I know, but there was something.
you know.
Especially from the school, they get them. You know, they'll get them from like Q Connect or whatever. It'll be like 50p a box of like 20. But I used to go home and I used to write in them. That's so school. If they're watching and they're trying to press the charges, it did help me get into writing. So
it's only the Grange, mate.
No. I went to the Grange. Sean went to grammar school.
I went to grammar school, but we don't talk about it because I like to
You don't like
sound.
You don't like sound.
Yeah. I like it down here on the street. You know, I like to sort of lord it above people quietly. Yeah. I was a small fish in a big pond at the grammar school. I'll tell you that.
I didn't make it into the grammar school, unfortunately.
Yeah, me neither. I was dumb.
I did. Never mind.
That's why we get along so much, isn't it?
Well, I don't count because I was a forces brat, so I moved around to like 10 different schools and just kind of landed.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do a test.
You're part of like the Armed Forces Covenant where they were like, okay, well, we've got to get some Armed Forces kids in grammar schools, right? We've got to get a couple into grammar schools.
Because I was a RAF brat and my dad left the RAF just before I changed schools. They had to actually appeal in court to get me a school.
No way.
Yeah. So that was the only way I got into college was them appealing.
Kitchen.
I moved.
Otherwise, you'd be ripping out kitchens for a living.
Ripping out kitchens for a living, mate. Nothing wrong with that, by the
way. Fair enough. Yeah. But anyway, that's not very D&D related.
Although, is it? Like, because it's interesting that there's combat in D&D is one of the core parts, rules and structure. I don't know. Do you guys?
And then
because I work for the civil service.
Newest adventure book, Strixhaven, is all about being at school.
Yeah.
So, you know, there you
go. I work for
okay.
civil service. I work with the army, and I wonder if there is, you know, a connection between these things. I don't know if you've ever thought about it.
Well, I haven't thought about it, but there is a huge crossover between Forces people and board games, and tabletop games, right. Things like Warhammer, just really popular in all of the armed forces.
I see. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. I'm going to probe some more of the armed forces people I work with and find out all their secrets, like what sort of things they're into, right?
Yeah, my dad was very competitive at all board games whatsoever, so they would all end up with everyone teaming up against him because he just didn't. he wasn't fair to anybody. He wasn't fair to anyone. Anyway, so go on. Sorry.
No, it's just you finish up and then we can look at home brewing and
no, it's fine. I just wondered if anybody wanted to talk about note taking as we started talking about.
We all love a good note taking.
Yeah, so
and a note taker, which is Christine in our group, by the way.
Christine, and then if it's not Christine, it's Brad, which we discovered in the last episode when Johnny told us something, and it was me, Sean, Joffrey, and Dan.
We'll just go back on the stream and figure it out.
No one took any note. What's that guy's name? So yeah, I mean, you guys are I found that when I took my notes digitally, there was too much, and I was writing stuff out like it was being said. Brad, Christine, any recommendations on note taking?
I tried at the beginning, because obviously it was my first ever campaign. I tried to write like a dramatis personae, like the opening of the play, you get all the characters, and in a lot of like Game of Thrones, they've always got the list of all the families and stuff. And I thought, I'll try and do that. It got overwhelming, and I was also trying to do place names as well. And I was trying to basically create like an index, just because I'm a geek and I love a list. Yeah. But it just didn't work. Like keeping on top of it was just massive because.
And you end up asking Johnny to repeat half the things he says because you don't know how to spell it or.
Yeah, the wealth of NPCs was just didn't work for me, and it probably does work for some people. I just didn't. I get on with it at all.
That's kind of what I do, but I write information I know I'll forget. So it's almost always people names, place names, and a couple of other key bits of information because I'm good at remembering events. I'm really good at remembering events, and I'm terrible at remembering names and places.
I think with me, I go to the old-fashioned notebook with just pen and paper, and I prefer it without lines because sometimes you have to draw things like maps and stuff. But all I do is I will write down. I don't write a huge amount of detail, but I do write just to try and jog my memory. I try and put in a box key names and key places so that I can flick. So when I'm flicking through, I can go, hang on a minute, and then it will jog a memory when I go, oh look. And then there's sort of, Johnny's very good at putting little recurring themes, and one of the recurring themes that we've got at the moment is that we keep having these visions, these kind of group dream things. So every page that I've mentioned the vision, I've folded over the corner so I can go back and have a little look, so I can find them quite quickly.
Well, we talked about the visions last time and could sort of barely remember it. So
we're like,
we needed that bloody notebook. We needed you there.
We were like, something about tree. I don't know.
It's terrible.
The other thing that I've got in here as well is I have my list of pockets because I decided.
Oh, that's great.
Right when I started, right at the beginning, was that Faeza was someone who had a lot of pockets. But I was like, no, she's got 43 pockets. She's not just got a lot of pockets, she's got 43, and everything's got its own little home. So far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've filled nearly half of them with specific things.
Interesting.
That's pretty cool.
So when I pull things out, then I can say, so that out of pocket 27, she pulls her thermal cube. If any geeks,
we can do next year. We'll do an extended. We'll break the rules, right? We'll do an extended advent calendar.
Yeah, maybe
of all the pockets.
But I'm trying to, if there's anything game related, it goes like story related, it goes on this side, and if there's anything that, because we all often have our chats as well at the end of the stream and at the beginning of the stream about specific things we're going to do, jobs and stuff, that goes on the other side. So, and sometimes when I'm drawing a map or something, I'll do it on that side as well, just to try and keep when you're going into a dungeon or something like that. Then I'll try
very thorough note taking. But I think definitely the recommendation which actually thought was amazing out there was the squaring of names and important things. That was really cool.
It just helps to find things, and like I say, with the folding of the corner, just try and help you this is going to come up again, so you're like, yeah, all right. And I know what page I've got my the gods, because Johnny has created this huge lore, and it keeps coming up the gods, and so to remember the names of the gods, I had one time, and then all of a sudden he turns out he's introduced like another half a dozen.
Yeah, I've been trying to memorize the new gods. I can't.
It doesn't stay in for some reason.
It's not staying in. I can remember all the original gods, but I can't name the new ones.
I don't know one DM that clouds that kind of information from players. So another thing that we can say is just ask. If you don't remember anything, just ask. There is a above the table and on the table conversations, right, that can sort of happen. So you might hear a lot of people say, "Oh, above the table." And above the table just means you're sort of you've paused the game and you come out of it and you go,
Sean needs to know something.
Yeah, above the table, Johnny, Ryan has completely forgotten about the gods. Can you just remind me about that? And then we go back, and then you go unpause the game and go back.
Well, like Sixsmith would know this. He's a fighter, but Sean can't remember how to use a tool in his arsenal. How does it work? Can you help me out? Sort of thing.
And another rule is, and what happens under the table, nobody mentions.
Yes.
That's Faeza's
That's basically where rogues and sorcerers hang out under the table. So the last thing I want to touch on before we go to some rituals and superstitions that we may have is that difference between homebrewing and home ruling. We've given you guys resources. We've said where to look, where to find all the stuff from Wizards. Where to be able to use that to create and start to learn, and some recommendations. And then if you wanted to take it any further than this, there is what they call homebrewing. Homebrewing is creating your entire world. Erionwel is a homebrewed world that uses the Dungeons and Dragons mechanics to be able to let us play, but doesn't particularly use any of their lore, their pantheon, their worlds. We have some of the same items, and the same monsters, whether reskinned. But homebrewing actually allows you to create anything you want within the setting and adapt it however you would like to. There are so the one thing to note here is that in D&D Beyond, you can create your own content. You can upload it, I believe, if you have like the master account. And so you could potentially do this, but it doesn't yet let you upload your own races and classes and a few other things. Brad, I feel like
you can homebrew races on there now, not classes still, but you can homebrew.
I believe Roll20 allows you to upload stuff. That's
Roll20 is very freeform, but like as I said before, it's also ridiculously stupidly annoying to use and not
so
easy.
Johnny's invented a few of his
in
own.
Our opinion.
Yes, Johnny's invented.
There are some people who would die on that sword.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, some people absolutely adore Roll20.
So Johnny's invented a few of his own classes, and I think the best place to find a lot of this stuff is there's a website called DM's Guild, which is where a lot of people will put their own stuff, all their homebrew adventures, their characters, their items. They'll put them all up on there to be able to be used. Like as we talked about, like Ryan
and
being, So go ahead.
As I was going to say, even though a lot of the stuff has a price on it, it's actually a lot of it free. It's a pay what you want website, most of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and it depends on, and again, I personally would prefer to run games through D&D Beyond because it's easy and it makes it easy for everyone. But if you are a DM that allows people to use Roll20 and create your own home classes, I know, as we talked about Ryan being a barbarian, there is no hand-to-hand like boxer class, a pugilist class, but someone's created one on DM's Guild. So I could potentially buy that. And then, if we were using something like that, run it. And a lot of these people, they put a lot of time and effort and they try and balance them. And I believe you need to get recommended or something. You need to get your work checked before you can put it on there, I think, by someone who basically by a moderator.
I've never uploaded it.
Yeah. There's maybe a vetting process or something involved.
Yeah. So you can't just be like, you get level 9 spells at level 1. Do you know what I mean? Like no one's saying, oh, because it was on DM's Guild, I bought it. But so there's options out there, and home ruling is a similar thing. There are a set of rules inside of, as we said in the player's handbook, but home ruling allows you to make some changes. For example, criticals is something that we have changed within our game and our rulings. Generally in the book, if you score a 20 on your attack roll on your D20 or 19 for those champion fighters, you will normally roll double the amount of dice. So if you rolled 1 d10, you'd roll 2 d10s and you would take that score. But we changed the way that we wanted crits because we wanted our crits to feel, I think they're called crunchy crits, what we do, which is where you roll your dice and then you add all the maximums to it. So if you rolled a d10 and you plus 3, then you would basically hit for 13 automatically, and then you roll a d10 on top of that. And so there's many, many ways for you to basically change some of the rules, change some of the ways in home ruling and home brewing. Brad, you're actually inventing your own homebrew world. I won't ask you to sort of tell us what it is or get into it because I imagine it's quite extensive. But what's some
it's
good
like
tips
trying to explain
people?
what Middle Earth is like.
Exactly.
Where do you start? And
But where are some good tips and resources for people to?
Oh God! So I mean, for any good writer, any writer that wants to write pretty much anything, Scrivener's a good tool. Doesn't have to be homebrewing worlds, can be writing a novel, could be writing a script, anything at all. But then outside of that, there is just, some of it is very specific. So if you want to make maps, I would recommend Incarnate. Making tokens, there's loads of websites for making tokens. And just good information in general, Reddit is by far and away the thing I use most. Because, as everybody knows, other people are better at it than I am. In most things that you do, there's someone better, and they've posted that on Reddit.
Yes. No, you're 100% right. Yeah. And sort of, being able to know when and how to poach that is a huge part of the creative process, as any person is.
I don't call it stealing, I call it innovating.
Yes. Exactly.
So a great example of that, I think we have a game that we play. We have a Curse of Strahd game, and Bradley has borrowed elements from Reddit and put them in our games. And I think there was an amazing piece where we sort of looking at these stained glass windows and doing all these really amazing story moments. And I was like, oh shit, man, that was really fucking amazing. And Bradley was like, It's not in the book at all. Like,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that's. But you made it feel like.
Yeah, a lot of it because there's this one guy called Dragna Carter who has reloaded
Brilliant
the
name,
entire
by the way, Dragna Carter.
He's reloaded the entire book.
Oh, instead of Magna Carta.
Amazing, it's an amazing resources. Over 15 chapters and 11 appendices. He's completely reloaded with new content, changed content. Here's what you can do if the party's like really good at combat. Here's what you can do if the party's shit at combat. So
that's great.
That's really lovely. Yeah, it's like you know, isn't it? There's that fable where they like hire hackers, don't they, to sort of do jobs for them. That's like that. You know, get the guy who's hacked the thing to make it better for everyone. Take that.
Yeah, somebody else has done the work.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Why would I do all the work? It's already enough work currently, but trying to make it better is already so much additional work.
Yeah.
What's this chap's name again? What's this?
Dragna Carter.
Dragna Carter.
On Reddit.
I'm a fan of the name alone.
Yeah.
Right.
It's good. Right. It's really good.
I think he actually nowadays streams his own adventure now. Like he runs Strahd as a Twitch thing. So I don't know. I use his Reddit.
That's very nice. Okay, so just before maybe we touch on the fun bit that Shaw mentioned, like many games, like many sports, as we mentioned with the family rolling dice, there are a lot of rituals and superstitions and things that people love to bring to any form of game. The biggest one of conversation that we've had is rolling your dice, right? Not only do people have good dice, bad dice. Taj mentioned it in the chat that Dan would ban people from using their dice if they kept rolling good rolls. You know, there are stories of people baking their dice.
The superstition of the dice having the sort of the luck or the lack of
pseudo RNG or like anything though. You know, I used to kiss dice before rolling them until this pre-pandemic. Until Dan sort of said, "Ryan, you're not the first person to use those dice. They've been in that pool for a long time." So, you know, there's and there's the big one of dice jail, right? You know, if the dice are rolling badly, you chuck them in dice jail. I'm not using those. We in this stream have Bradding the dice.
Yeah, sorry, Brad.
Sorry, Brad. But we have Brad in the dice because Brad's physical.
All because
rolls...
I've rolled like 20 natural ones in 5 sessions. Come on.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you get unlucky, and to the point where Taj bought him a whole load of dice. To try and levy it out. But, you know, like discussing tactics, different kinds of role-playing, different kind of food, as Chris said, bringing snacks, even wearing lucky pants, if that's the kind of thing you do. Are there any rituals, superstitions that you guys like to set into with games or like to play? I know when we played with Dan, one of the big things for us was someone does lunch. And that normally fell to me.
Someone brings snacks and someone does lunch.
I volunteered for lunch, and I'd always make sure I'd put on a nice spread for people that wouldn't make them too lethargic, but would feed them up. You know, so that was the
right snacks are critical. You can't go too healthy because then people are miserable because of that. And they think, why the hell are you on snacks and why did I come here for this? Yeah. And you can't go too heavy or people will get the sugar high, then the crash, or they'll be too full of food to be able to think properly. It's a real fine line, like when it comes to, maybe we should talk about that after we've touched on superstitions, because I'm interested in anyone's recommendations, especially in the chat, for like good snacks for a kind of gaming session.
I mean,
so yeah, any rituals or superstitions?
I mean, I don't really have rituals for D&D. I had rituals for Monster Hunter.
Well, what's that? Now I want to know what that is.
Yeah, so because there was drops from doing the bosses that were, I don't know, 1%, 0.5%. So there's a community-wide sort of ritual of there's this little pet that is in every game. Sometimes it's a little miniature pig, sometimes it's a little cat, sometimes it's something else, and you used to pet the poogie. And if he gave you a little love heart, then you knew your luck was good, and off you went.
I love it.
And if he didn't give you a love heart, you knew you weren't going to get the item.
You're like, I'm not going to give it a try today. The poogie didn't give me the luck. Give me the luck.
So has that translated to D&D for you at all? Do you have
not really? I mean, I blow dice, but I've always blowed dice since I was a kid. So I don't know.
That's more ritual than superstition, I guess. In many ways. Yeah.
I used to roll on my d20s and then take out the lowest one and then roll them again, lowest one, roll them again, lowest one. And then whichever stuck with me to be the highest, I'd use that set. That's what I used to do.
Well, I wouldn't own up to that, to be honest. I think no, I'm only joking. We all have our own. I don't think I have for D&D because I've never found. It's weird, isn't it? When you're in the moment, I want the numbers to succeed, and you're so in it. And then as soon as I leave, I don't think about the numbers. I don't think about that aspect of it. But then in the moment, it's so powerful and important. But I don't. So I don't think that I have ever thought about it afterwards. So I could think of any superstitions. It's only in the moment do I realize how important it is. So no, I really don't have any superstitions. But then I guess also maybe it comes from if you were more inclined to be immersed in the world of sport before you came into this, then maybe the superstitions from sport could come over to this.
Spaces that like to sit in particular places on the table. Like actually, I found that we did that at Dan's quite a bit. We would sit in specific locations around the table.
That's more like the schoolyard, the school thing where you're like, this is my seat. I feel good about this. I'm going to stay in my seat.
But that's still a superstition. I think that's still a sort of way to get immerse yourself in, right? This is me playing. Yeah. You're putting on a hat, wearing a pipe. We used to buy bottles of mead when we went to Dan's as well.
Yeah.
We used to have a cup of mead. That became a sort of a ritual, if you will, a sort of a cheeky
little
bit
Christine?
of mead.
Rituals, superstitions?
I don't have any rituals or superstitions because I don't think I've been playing long enough. I like to be prepared because I haven't been playing long enough. So basically means I read the last few pages of the notebook and go, what does that mean? A little bit.
Yeah.
I like to have my stuff like set in places, Well,
that's a ritual, isn't it?
It's just preparing. It's just setting up.
Yeah, that's just. I would say that's just preparing.
Tell me what you're drinking out of, Christine. What are you drinking out of? You're drinking out of Faeza's mug, are you?
I'm not today because it's not a game.
But I'd say that's something you grab, though, isn't it? You grab Faeza's mug because it's the one that.
Well, it depends. If you ascribe the luck to it, then it's a superstition.
No, because
then you don't ascribe the luck to it, do you?
Because I have done games where I haven't been drinking out of it because it's I've used it.
We should put it to the test. Stop drinking out of it and see what happens.
Look, I'm trying to say superstitions are ludicrous and ridiculous. By the way,
I know you are, but I think
they're not real things. I don't want to have to get too sort of like.
So you're telling me that ghost that lives downstairs isn't actually real?
No, I didn't say supernatural wasn't real.
Oh, okay.
I just said if you pat the ghost on the head every time you start a game for good luck, then that's ludicrous. Yeah. But of course, if you just acknowledge the
that's only if it comes up through the floorboards and you pat it on the head. If it doesn't come through the floorboards, it comes out the door.
No. Yeah, that's a misnomer. Ghosts have to walk upstairs just like the rest of us.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
That's why they're wailing all the time.
That's why they've got a flying speed of 0 in the player's handbook.
And because most of the ghosts are old and I can't actually make it up the stairs. They need a chairlift.
Yeah.
Oh man, so you have to install a chairlift for your own ghosts.
I feel like we've gone off on a tangent.
From superstitions to the supernatural.
I'd be like, come on.
Okay, well, I think let's look onto the final segments. There's two final things I want to talk about. One is what we sort of love as people playing D&D, and then that final catch up that Sean was mentioning about what we think is next with us. We won't take too much anyone's time. All right, I want a short one sentence about what you love about D&D. Mine is the immersive role playing with friends and smashy.
Yeah, but you prepared, so that's why that was a nice sort of tight little sort of thing. I don't have one prepared. I like. It's not as I'm not good at short sentences.
Yeah.
It's all about the collaborative storytelling for me. It's all about collaborative storytelling, and I'll just leave it there. That's it for me. I've got more, but that's it. I'm trying to keep it to that. I'm trying to be good.
Start shaking.
Hold on a minute.
I like hanging with my friends and there's definitely an and there. I'm trying to think what it is.
Same here.
And
many ands for you, Sean.
Just being
problem solving, group problem solving.
Just being a bit creative, just thinking outside the box and seeing how Johnny rolls with it.
Yes.
He's very
if you'll allow it.
He's very good at it.
If you'll allow it, the words that a DM hates to hear. Brad?
And everyone knows it's all three for me. It's everything.
Oh.
It's the social, it's the smashy, it's the storytelling. Love it all.
Nice. I think that just sort of proves that I think what we all love about it is that it brings friends together. It takes you out of this horrible world that we've been living in these last 2 years.
Puts you in a different kind of horrible world.
Yeah.
But one where you've got a sword.
But
Mate, I'm a software engineer. My life hasn't changed.
Yeah. It's one that you can solve by throwing fireballs out of your hands, and you can't really do that here.
No, verbal fireballs maybe.
Yeah, or Molotov cocktails, but then that's just called alchemist fire in D&D. So there you go.
Hey, how good would a film be about people who decide to radicalize, like positively, obviously, to like and rise up, but over their games of D&D, and they learn about like the unfairness of their world through D&D, and then they rise up on the actual streets using all the knowledge and the teamwork that they've built.
To be fair, I think that's an absolutely excellent way of teaching politics in schools. Is D&D?
Yeah, I think it would be, wouldn't it? I mean, you would almost imagine that like Risk is one of the early versions of that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, no, D&D is absolutely the way they bring in yoga, as I learned when I stayed with Dan. They bring in yoga into schools to try and teach young kids how to sort of manage their thoughts and their sort of body. They should bring D&D in, you're right, to sort of learn about politics and other sorts of things, religion and all sorts of other things.
Yeah,
it's just a good social tool.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah. You get some horribly racist person running your game. Oh dear.
Okay, so let's have a think. So where we ended up, Christine, I'm going to tell you.
Good, because I don't remember.
The fire has been unleashed inside of Faeza, right? You need to seeing that how much damage Toots can do on the front line. I think you've got to let her into the world now. I think you got to let her into the world.
So what we found out is so we talked about this in the last session actually, but it was without the two of you, without all of the key members actually. But we touched on where we were in the game currently, where we'd be coming back to in the new year, which I can't believe now is a week away. Ridiculous. Yeah. But when we come back, we will have just come out of the malaise and the sort of the conflict that came out of the war, the skirmish. I mean, but it felt like a war to us. I mean, really, like it's the sort of one of the biggest battles we'd have fought, some of us ever as characters, and some of us for a long time. So that sort of turning point seemed to, in that session that you weren't present at, Christine, it seemed to be a turning point for us as players as well, to think, well, where are our characters going? So I don't know if I'm sure if you haven't caught up with it, I know you'll catch up with it before
I've got
before we get started. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure where your knowledge. I don't want to spoil too much for you, see. So we kept Faeza like in the conversation, but we don't want to speak for Faeza. So like, there's every chance, like once you listen to the episode, there's every chance that we can start the next episode or however Johnny has it planned with you, sort of agreeing with what you agree with, not agreeing with what you don't agree with. But we sort of came to the idea that once we find my center and we sort of find out what's going on with some of your arc, there'll be a point where we'll all decide how can we do something positive about the world that we're in. How can we confront all of the negativity we've had thrust upon us? How can we sort of turn the tables and face it head on instead and actually do some good? And what's interesting is all of our characters have different ideas about what that is, right? How you bring the positivity into the world. And like for example, some character, I'm sure Dox wants to burn it down first before he can say safely. Octavius we don't know about because he's walked away from the table. He walked away. Bradley hasn't walked away from the table. Octavius walked away from the group. So that's where we're at a sort of turning point where as we go on the journey towards my center, we will also be going on the journey towards finding how we can bring a bit more order to this chaos, or maybe some chaos to the order if we don't like the order as it currently stands. So I don't know how you feel about that. This is your initial reaction, I imagine, as well, because we've always been talking about it, behind the scenes a little bit. I mean, I always felt like we're heading in that direction because we want to do something positive. So.
There's a lot wrong with the order in the world in terms of the fact that there is a hierarchy, as in a lot of worlds and a lot of real and imaginary and fantasy. So there's some authority is not necessarily right. That's something that I know. For example, Faeza had discovered you don't know this yet, but in her past, you find out that she discovered that to her cost, because she's a very naive and trusting person, and it hasn't, it gave her a knock. So when she figured that out, and she's going to find out when my center comes into the picture, there's going to be a big realization there as well, which I think
it's very exciting.
Yeah, I think so. We've chatted to Johnny about it. Stuff like that, which is what you do with your DM. So the other thing, you can have side conversations with your DM about where you want your character arc to go. If you have an idea, you don't have to. You can just sort of sit back and follow the story if you want to. But deciding the direction of what you're comfortable doing is also very important. Johnny had a conversation with us very early on. About, especially because this is live streamed.
Oh, we've had such good internet from Christine today.
Really unlucky.
You just cut out there at the critical point that you were going to explain.
Ethernet cable. We thought it was going to be okay.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back. You're back.
Am I back?
You said Johnny just told me, and then you.
Oh, okay. Oh, bugger. It's that thing of where Johnny had this conversation with us all very early on about what we were comfortable talking about in our world. And that could be, if there's certain things that are certainly triggering for you and you don't want to bring it into your world. This is the other thing about it can be an escape. And there can be some things that you actually want to tackle head on, but you can only do that if you've got the consent of everyone around the table. And it is a joint element, because it is serious. So it sounds silly because it is an escapism, but actually you do put a bit of yourself on the table, and you do there is an element of vulnerability when you're talking about.
There's got to be always trust in proper D&D game.
It sounds silly because when you're a kid in the playground, if you are labelled a geek or a nerd, that especially growing up in like the 80s and 90s, that was it. You got bullied. And so there is still that element around the table, even when you're in your 30s and your 40s. People,
there's a lot of gatekeeping.
A lot
of gatekeeping in D&D.
Exposing yourself to that, and that's the good thing about having friends around the table, and why sometimes sitting around the table with strangers can be a bit, because you're like, actually, they're talking about stuff I'm not comfortable about. Maybe they've got different priorities about how they want to play this game, or maybe they're quite blasé about something that's quite important to me, and that could be anything. That could be about sexism or racism, like something big, or it could be about actually I don't want to be smashy all the time, I'm getting really bored. Can we actually do some storytelling, or we're doing too much storytelling? I'm looking at you, Ryan. Can we smash this up?
Coin the phrase getting sharp axe, haven't we? We haven't used it in so long, it's just staying sharp.
I don't know if this is true of everybody, because the people around the table set this tone, but I've seen it it being explained as veils and lines. So you don't ever cross a line. So if everybody around the table says, right, no child molestation, you don't cross that line. But if the veil is I'm uncomfortable with spiders, but I actually would like to have them in a game because it might help me get over my fear, or it's not going to stop me from playing if they are in the game, but I may be afraid of them. So it's like the veil is like, you know what, push it if you want, and I'll let you know if I'm uncomfortable. But the line is, let's not cross this when we play under any circumstance. So safety is an incredible part of it, and we're sort of learning more about that, aren't we? Because I think as D&D becomes more inclusive, and as there is that element, you're right, in any sort of fan base where it can become quite acerbic and it can be quite gatekeepery and quite nasty, we've got to make sure the inclusivity includes anybody, and that's it's a really important line to balance, whilst also, as I feel very strongly about, when you create anything, I think it should be important, even if it's important because it's silly and we all have fun because it's silly. I like that it's important also, and sometimes important things go across the veil, like where we speak about race fairly often in our thing, and I'm glad everybody's comfortable with it, because we feel like that's something we can speak to in our own ways, and it's a veil we're sometimes willing to cross, and it's difficult, but we would never cross any lines, I hope.
So, I mean, we had a big thing about sexism even, because we went into Nomengarten, and all of a sudden it was a very matriarchal society, And for once, you know, not for once, but for slightly unusual for the real world, the women would only talk to Faeza because she's the only female in the party.
It's very shocking, wasn't it?
When
we first done that. Yeah.
And we very much addressed that. We very much addressed that since you've been away.
Oh, cool. To that one. That's okay.
Yes, exactly.
We'll see. No.
Yeah. But it was interesting because it gave Faeza, who often, you know, is a small character, literally physically, and sometimes overlooked, a sort of opportunity to be thrust in forward. So that was really interesting as well from the story perspective.
Yeah, it was. But then, you know, there was also some people, you know, there was that element of, I think we had a conversation about it where, oh, hang on a minute, does that mean that Faeza is getting too much of the spotlight because all of a sudden she's being thrust forward? And it was an interesting conversation that we had amongst ourselves, and I hope we sorted it out with you. So,
and also that might make you, you know, as a new player, you might not be ready to like be a face character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so that makes the game uncomfortable for you if that's the kind of thing that So it's finding that balance between everybody,
being open, talking to each other. Yeah, that's one of the most important things. I just want to circle back because I saw Bradley smirking a little bit when we were talking about nobody knows what's going to happen next with a character, and I feel like that's something that we can't. Brian and I speculated and we talked a little bit about it in the last episode. You jumped on as well, Bradley, in the Twitch, which was great. I hope we did both of you a service when we talked about, you know, where characters might go next and some story that has been in the past, in the previous episode, which you can watch online. But what can you tell us for people who are thinking, what can I expect when I watch the episode next Monday, without giving too much away, but without, you know, giving them. I'm trying to find a nicer way to say blue balls, but we'll find a. You've got to give us something new. Okay. Oh God, I don't like the way you said that.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, he doesn't have to be alive. Does he? Octavius will be there in pieces.
His corpse comes back to us,
someone's mailing him back.
Yeah, exactly. Serial killer, and that's our next arc. Hawthorne, the serial killer. No, okay.
Could be.
Well, problem is that I don't really know where to take him until. Yeah. The group dynamics start happening again, if that makes sense. Until the characters start engaging each other again. It's quite hard to know where he is. Yeah, I mean, I sort of know where he is mentally. It's probably the worst he's ever been in his life.
But you know that can change. These things can change on a dime because in the moment characters react sometimes in ways you don't expect or predict, right? Which is what I absolutely love about D&D as well. The character can almost run away from you sometimes.
It's all very interesting because Christine has no idea what's going on.
No, so quietly going.
Oh, is this you know? Oh my God, I am trying to reel back, but of course you don't. You don't know.
No idea why Octavius is not part of the group.
No, this is really interesting. Yeah, but I know. I've got a week. I'll catch up. It's fine.
Do what everybody else does. Put it on in the background. It's fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna call last orders there at Ripper's Roadside Tavern. Make sure you pack up your bedrolls, and we'll throw the fire out on this lovely night. You can head back down the dusty trails. Make sure your random encounters don't roll too high. Hopefully, you only get wolves instead of gelatinous cubes. And we shall see you guys next week for a full party. Hopefully,
it will be for the first time in a long time.
First time in a long time. We've all had a crazy winter season, and we are going to kick off 2022 with Blood and Song. So thank you very much for being here, everyone. Thanks for giving some recommendations. I think Christine mentioned that we will post them out as a list, or maybe a couple of tweets to sort of say where to go. And other than that,
thanks, Ryan. Thanks for corralling us.
It's all right, no problem.
Keep in order.
It's just a barman's duty here at the tavern. You know, far worse things have come.
Keep the conversation flowing, right? That's what they do in the
bar. Keep the drinks and the conversation flowing, and the hearth warm, and everyone's happy. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you guys all next week. Bye-bye.
See you later.